Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tina and I'm the Capability Building Coordinator for Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Connecting Up is a part of the Info Exchange Group. Info Exchange is a not-for-profit social enterprise that has delivered technology for social justice for over 25 years. With over 100 staff across Australia and New Zealand, we tackle the biggest social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar, How to Overcome the 7 Biggest Mistakes Not-for-Profits Make on Social Media, which will be presented by Alicia Hancock from Hancock Creative. We'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted, so if you have any technical issues, please type it into the questions box on your webinar panel and I'll be able to assist you. If you have any questions during the session, please also type it into the questions box and Alicia will answer them in the Q&A section at the end of the webinar. Please note that your comments and questions will not appear to the entire group. If you are on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of the audio and video of the webinar. If possible, please close all other programs to help you have the best experience. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording and the slides will be sent to you shortly after the webinar ends. I'm also excited today to offer to the webinar attendees an exclusive 25% discount for the tickets to the Connecting Up Transform conference in Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre this May. In case you aren't already aware, the Connecting Up conference is Australia's premier non-profit technology conference and includes masterclasses, leadership breakfasts, plenary sessions, exhibition, and the 2019 Australian Not-for-Profit Technology Awards. I have 25 discounted tickets, which can be booked on a first-come, first-served basis using a code. So when I send out the webinar recording after the session, I'll send the code out to everybody as well. This discount code will be valid for 2 weeks, so please do book as soon as possible if you're interested. So before we start, I'd also like to remind you that there will be a short survey at the end of the webinar. We'd appreciate it if you took a few minutes to provide us with some feedback. That's all from me for now. I'll pass it over to Alicia to get things started. Thanks, Alicia.
Good morning, everybody. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you so much, Tina, for that fantastic introduction to get us kick-started on our webinar today. So looking forward to chatting with all of you over this session. As Tina has let me know, there is going to be a lot of you on the webinar today, which means maybe I can't do as many interactions and answer as many questions as they'd usually like. But if in doubt, throw your questions in there. And even if I follow up with you after the event, that I'd be more than happy to do that for you. I'm really excited to teach as many not-for-profits and causes and charities as I can. So if you have questions that we don't get through today, don't be afraid to send those through. And between myself and my team, we'll make sure we get back to everybody with all of the answers that you're looking for. Now, I love doing this webinar because it's a really good starting point for a lot of people on social media. One of the things I've found working with nonprofits and charities for the last sort of 3 or 4 years has been that a lot of the same things come up, and that doesn't matter whether they're in regional New South Wales or in the heart of Sydney or the top of the Northern Territory, whether they're a tiny little organisation or even a really large national. A lot of the same fears around social media and even some of the mistakes we see happening over and over again. So what I like to do with this webinar is just walk you through the most common mistakes that I do see in social media and give you some practical tips and advice how to actually overcome those as well. So it gives a good overview of lots of different elements of social media, but I do have an awful lot of stuff to cover with you in an hour. I know I do talk a little bit fast, so if you're having trouble keeping up with me, just let me know through the questions and Tina can message me and let me know if I'm going a little bit too quick. But otherwise, I'm really looking forward to covering a lot of information for you over the next hour. I'm still seeing lots of new people attending and joining in, so welcome everybody. I'm just going to get kicked off with just a little bit of introduction because I'm mindful of time, but I'm sure more people are going to join in as we go as well, and I'm really excited to have everyone join in. And for those who are listening back on the recording, hello as well, and don't hesitate to reach out to me or Hancock Creative if you've got more questions after the webinar when you're watching the recording back. We're always more than happy to help anybody in the cause and impact space. All right, let's start getting kicked off. So the first thing I like to say, which Tina also did mention as well, is just make sure you take the time now to put on your headphones, shut the door if you can, and really relax and enjoy. I suggest having a notepad and pen in front of you because I will be giving lots of tips and advice. And it's always good to be able to jot those down as you go. although you will have the recording to listen back to later if you need to. And again, just turning off anything behind the scenes that might slow your Wi-Fi down. So things like Dropbox or auto syncing through Google Drive are some of the big killers on your Wi-Fi signal. If you do have trouble, pop your message into questions, but generally if your sound drops off or you have any connection issues, just go back and use the same link again and log back in and you should be good to go again. All right. Let's get started. So the first thing I'd love to do, and Tina will jump in and read some of these back out to me, but I'd love you to share with me with your social media, what's working well so far, what's not working well, what do you really want to get out of this webinar? It's really great for me to get some context about where you're all at right now, just to get a bit of an idea of some of the things to really push into in this webinar, some of the things you might already be doing really well. So I'll let Tina jump in and share some of those comments as they start coming through, but just to get a feel of, where are you now? What is your strength and where are some of the challenges that you have at the moment?
Hi, Alicia. We do have an answer here. Not working well, using Facebook and Instagram to complement each other. Working well, interactive content, example, posting question. What works well when we post about women's issues and charities.
Yeah, great.
I'm very few followers and getting more of them. Not sure
Yeah,
who my community is.
that's a common one.
Lot
Absolutely. We've been
coming
talking about that as
through.
well. I can imagine.
Trying to get through them. They're just flooding through at the moment. Just give me a second. Okay. How to get the organisation to see the crucial push to showcasing stories that all
Oh, that's a good
not-for-profits have
one.
to sell their cause. Not working well, not having great or new imagery.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone, there's
Great.
just lots
These are
coming
all
through. I
things
can't
we're going
go
to be
through all
talking
of
about. I know, I'm
them.
really excited. So the types of challenges that you guys are already starting to share with me, a lot of these are topics I'm going to be covered. Granted, we can't go really deep into each single one because we've only got an hour to do everything, but they're questions that I hear all the time. So the one about, how do we get management to understand the importance of storytelling? What do we do when we don't have lots of great images? These are all really common challenges for the nonprofit space. So know that you're not alone. This is totally normal, and I'm going to address as many of these as I can. And if we do get to the end and you said something at the start that I haven't really covered yet, that's a great thing to flag back up with Tina and the team, and I can make sure I answer those questions at the end. All right. Wow, a lot of you joined in. This is amazing. All right, let's get stuck into this. So I just always like to start off a webinar with giving you a bit of context around what we're going to cover and who should be here. So you're in the right place right now if you're currently working for a not-for-profit, a social enterprise, or a community group, and you want to achieve some kind of measurable results online. I always think the key with social media is that measurable results. It's great to get lots of likes or reach, but they really don't mean anything for your organization unless you're getting a clear outcome that actually has an impact on what your organization is trying to do. You're also in the right place if you're just looking for building that engaged community, that as soon as you post in that community and go, hey, we need volunteers or we need donors, that everyone just jumps to action and straight away starts supporting whatever it is that you're trying to achieve as an organization. That's really the heart for me of social media, building that community that are ready at the drop of a hat to jump in and support you and what you're trying to do. And that's what we really want to work towards from this webinar. All right. Maybe you've thought about putting more time into social media, and maybe you've thought about using it as fundraising, bringing in customers or volunteers, or you've had a crack at it and it's not quite where you want to be yet. Now, I want to address something really early on in this. One of the biggest challenges that I see, as well as the mistakes around social media as such, one of the biggest challenges I see is a lot of us in this space, myself included, have a bit of a challenge around this imposter syndrome. We have a bit of fear sometimes around social media. So the reality is sometimes we get a little bit scared, and it's actually that fear that's holding us back rather than our technical ability or our storytelling ability. It's actually just something that's in our head. So I just want to touch on that. I hear a lot from nonprofits and cause, community people, marketing people, fundraising people. Sometimes they can feel a bit like a fraud if you're running social media. I'm not a social media person. I'm not a journalist. I'm not whatever. And it can make you feel a little bit nervous. The other common fear is most of you don't have massive marketing budgets, and there's often a bit of a fear of what happens if I do the wrong thing and I actually start wasting our money. And what if you make a mistake? So that's what this webinar is all about, trying to help you get more comfortable with the potential risks and the mistakes that could happen, and know that that's okay, because most not-for-profits do make mistakes online, and it's not the end of the world. They also get amazing results and outcomes as well. So I'd love to know a little bit about what some of the things you guys are afraid of. So let me tell you a little bit about my story, why you pop those in the comments, and then maybe Tina can let us know about what you might be scared of. What I really want from you in this webinar is to do, like, there's this old thing about the superhero pose. Standing like this amazing woman is now actually gives us more confidence, actually makes us feel better. So I really want you to try and push that fear aside for the time of this webinar and go, I can do this. I can smash social media. I can get the same outcomes as some of the stories you're going to hear in this session. I really want you to believe in yourself, because I can tell you right now, the nonprofits and causes I work with are no different to anyone who's logging in now. You're all dealing with the same challenges. You're all dealing with the same fears. It's the ones who push through and give it a go and make the mistakes and keep moving forward that get the amazing outcomes. So put on your superhero capes, because here we go. Now, I just want to tell you a little bit about my story. So I was a journalist and magazine editor for quite a long time. I made a really big mistake quite early in my career. So one of the first times I got published in the West Australian newspaper, I actually literally, excuse the dodgy photo, but I literally keep the frame picture of this in my house. I took a quick snap for you so you can see what I was talking about, where I actually wrote a story that was published. And I found out the day after, my boyfriend, then boyfriend, now husband, woke me up early in the morning and said, there's something I need to tell you. And they'd actually printed a retraction in the newspaper, which is basically a correction to say I'd got something wrong. So my very first time writing a story as a proper journalist, I made a mistake. This is basically how I felt. And I can tell you right now, I did not want to get out of bed. I wanted to hide from the world. I was terrified. I thought, well, clearly I'm not good enough for this. I shouldn't be a journalist if I can't even write a basic article without making a really big mistake. And it was actually about somebody's disability as well. So I was really quite horrified. And ironically, these people actually became a client of mine a long time later. But that moment when you make a big mistake, it is really quite scary. So for me, this really could have been the end. Walking away at this stage would have felt like the easier option. Going, I'm not cut out to be a journalist, I'm going to go and do something else, would have been the easy solution. But I'm really grateful that I did the hard thing. I went back into the paper the next day. I went and met with them and said, what have I done? What can I learn from this? You know, how could I have approached this differently? And went, well, one mistake will actually define my career, because I will make sure I never, ever, ever make that same mistake again. And that's what I did. And I've gone on to be published hundreds, if not thousands of times in newspapers all around Australia and around the world. I ended up working as the West Australian's publishing department editor and manager, running all of their online magazines down the track. I had the opportunity to host amazing events with everyone from Tim Winton to Kate Sobrano. I've interviewed lots of celebrities for them, from Adele to Matt Damon. So I'm super glad that I didn't give up and walk away, because all the things I actually would have missed out on. But since then, I've gone on to start my own business, and the social media world is the space that I play in now. So the kinds of people I meet, and I'm literally actually on a plane to the US after this webinar to go and meet and learn from the founders of Instagram, Priscilla Chan, talking about the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation. I'm really excited to see some of the different things I want to learn. But right here, this is me with Randy Zuckerberg, which is Mark's sister and the head of marketing of Facebook for the first 10 years. And this guy over here is Gary Vaynerchuk. He's currently the world's foremost expert in social media. If you want a good social media book, check out Gary's stuff. And he also shares tons of free training online through video under the name Gary V. So VEE, if you haven't come across him yet. He is well worth checking out. But a lot of people ask me how I made the transition from the journalism side of things to working in the nonprofit space. And this is kind of one of the stories. So fairly early on, when I started my business, Hancock Creative, I had the opportunity to work on a campaign for the Office of Road Safety in WA, and it was called Enjoy the Ride. So the whole concept was, it was a massive agency campaign. The concept was that if we could get everybody to slow down everything in their everyday lives, that they would therefore go and slow down on the roads as well. So I was only a tiny part of what was a massive campaign, but we ran all the social media for the campaign, and I blogged for it. So I wrote an article every day, 7 days a week for 3 months. And that was fantastic to be part of quite early on in my business. But it wasn't until about a year later that I really understood what it was all about. I mean, they'd won all these awards. It won the Gold Effie campaign. You know, me in the first few weeks, my business was voted one of the top creatives in WA. It was all kind of a whirlwind. But it was the moment when I got a call from someone going, "Did you hear what happened with that campaign?" I kind of went, "No, what happened?" It was the first time in 7 years that road deaths had decreased in WA. And statistically, 21 people were still alive because we told a powerful story. So that was the moment for me where I went, oh, so instead of helping sell more movies or sell more products or help famous people get more famous, I could use this storytelling for nonprofits, charities, causes, and they would actually use it to change lives or save lives. Like in this example, I look at this picture and think that could be somebody's grandfather, their father, their husband, you know, their wife, their best friend, even their children that might still be alive today because we told a really strong story. So that's kind of where my passion for social media for impact has really come from. Whoops. Since then, I've started putting on something which I call the Change the World event. Many of you might have heard, but I'll talk a bit more about that later. So now we actually do a lot of free training events. So things like this with Connecting Up, and things like our own Change the World event where we have between 200 and 400 people in a room, and we do a face-to-face full-day training event with lots of different speakers. We also won an Australian Web Award nationally for the best social media campaign in Australia. We won Telstra Micro Business Award Winners of the Year, I'm about to say last year, it's the year before now. And we've been voted for the last 2 years by Anne Hill as one of the 100 coolest companies to work for in Australia, which is really awesome. So as you can imagine, I'm pretty chuffed that I didn't give up. All right, I'm going to throw to Tina for a second. Do you want to share with me, Tina, some of the fears that people put in there, things they might be a bit nervous around social media?
Yep, sure. So we've got using the wrong voice, sharing personal stories, not breaching confidentiality, afraid of trying to make a lot of progress and then having the opposite happen of having less engagement. Likes don't translate to engaged community or support. The fear of
Absolutely.
the fear of it not reaching people. Coming across as something we're not and politically offending others due to the sensitive nature of our group.
Of course. There's
That's
some
about
good ones in there, and you know what? They're not uncommon. So there's a lot of challenges around the barrier between privacy and public, around the storytelling, and it can be really demoralizing when you spend a long time creating an amazing piece of content that you're super excited about, and you put it out there and there's crickets. But in this presentation, I'm going to explain to you why that happens and how you can overcome that. So thank you so much, Tina. They're great. Great input there, and I'm looking forward to reading through all of the rest of them after this as well. But there's nothing in there that surprised me at all. Obviously, as you can see from this slide, we've worked with nonprofits all around Australia, right from tiny ones to big national organisations like your Heart Foundations, Red Cross, Starlight Children's Foundation, Royal Lifesaving to Lifeline. So we're really used to working with organisations of all sizes, and the small ones and the large ones have a lot more in common around social media than you think. Even the really big ones, you think they might have social media together, but they often still do find it pretty tough. All right, so let's get stuck into this. So I wanted to share a couple of examples with you of what's possible with social media, because I know the fears often stop us from having a go. But for example, this is Lucy from Active Foundation. So they didn't do any social media, any online marketing. All of their fundraising was entirely offline. So all they did was adding in a little bit of social media to one of their existing campaigns, and they raised an additional 8,200, and the next year, additional nearly 12,500, which is amazing. So even just adding an element of social media to what you're already doing can make a huge difference to your organization. Here, another one from Lifeline. So they previous year, when they did the Lights by Lifeline campaign, they only raised around $3,000, and they did it over 12 weeks. As soon as they made it a Facebook and social media campaign, online donations were more than $12,000. So they increased the online donations by 400% just from telling powerful stories on social media. So I just want you to see these examples to see what's possible. And most of these either have one person doing the marketing or even maybe not even a full-time person. So know that it's totally possible. All right. I'm going to start moving pretty quickly now. We're going to get stuck into this 7 mistakes, but I really did want to take that moment to preclude this with, I get that some of this is scary, but I highly recommend you do it anyway, because those causes I see that push through that fear and have a crack, even if sometimes they make mistakes and sometimes they get it wrong, and occasionally, yes, you will offend someone. And unfortunately, there is no way to avoid that. And we're going to talk a little bit about audience and why that's really important, because it's okay if you offend people if they're not your target market. All right, let's get stuck into the 7 biggest mistakes nonprofits make on social media. And as I'm going, if you've got questions, do keep throwing those into questions and we'll get through as many as we can at the end. And I'm happy to stay on a bit past 9 if there's still more questions for you. Sorry, I'm in Perth, so 9 o'clock Perth time. So that'll be 12 o'clock for you on the East Coast. All right, let's go. So social media just doesn't work. 7 years ago when I started in this space, you could just have a page and start throwing content up there and you were going to get results. Unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore. So what we're really trying to do is actually get you a bit more strategic with your social media so you can get clearer outcomes. So where do we start? The first mistake I see is doing too much or doing it in the wrong place. Now, I like to share this. So this was developed by a guy called Pat Flynn, and it's called the social media, I think he calls it the social media pyramid. I don't know why, because it's round, so I'd say it's a wheel. But anyway, this gives you an idea that right now, these are some of the most prominent social media channels currently in the world, and there are literally thousands upon thousands of channels. So look, is it any wonder that you get overwhelmed about where to spend your time when there are this many different platforms you could be using? The most important advice I could give you is don't choose the platform that you enjoy using the most. Don't choose the platform that your board, your CEO, your boss thinks that you should use and go, oh, somebody's told me Twitter's amazing, so you totally should use that. Do choose the platforms based on what your resources are and who your audience is. This is how we get the best outcomes. Now, I'm going to quickly spend a few minutes on this slide, giving you a bit of an idea of why I would choose each different platform and some of the strengths and weaknesses. So Facebook right now has 14 million active users in Australia, which is actually the platform's biggest strength and its biggest weakness. As you can imagine, if there's 14 million people, they are all creating content as well as you. So it's really hard to compete with the volume of noise. And that means Facebook constantly is changing its algorithm to make sure it's delivering the highest value content. As a brand who has a Facebook page, that often means your organic reach has dropped and dropped and dropped. Just 5 or 6 years ago, we were seeing 18, 20% engagement rates as standard, whereas now it's very, very low. And I'll go through some benchmarks in a bit. But right now, engagement rates on Facebook for most nonprofits that we work with are, they start out at around 2%. So by that, I mean, if 100 people like your Facebook page, when you post a piece of content, 2 people or less will see it. So that comes through with the challenge that someone just mentioned there through Tina earlier. That's why we're putting content out there that we think is exciting but isn't going anywhere, because the engagement rate organically on Facebook is really, really low. The biggest strength of Facebook is there's 14 million people there. So we know 7 out of 10 Australians are active social media users, and 94% of Australian social media users are active on Facebook. So that's a really large potential audience. So for those managers and boards who are going, why do we need social media? The best thing to tell them is 7 out of 10 Australians are using it. So if you're not, you're missing a huge percentage of your audience. Now, the cool thing with Facebook is the ability to target the exact person you want to speak to. So Facebook has more than 1 million points of data on every user, because, when was the last time we logged out of it on our phone or our computer, right? So the fact they have all this data is a really great opportunity for you to micro-target the exact type of people you want to reach. And advertising is free, not free, is very, very low cost, and the content side is obviously free. So that's the power of Facebook. So Facebook is amazing if you want to access a market of retirees, for example. We know there's more grandparents on Facebook than there are CEOs on LinkedIn, for example. We also know Facebook engages mums, so mums with pre-primary or primary school age children 3 times more than any other demographic. So understanding your audience and where they are is critical to choosing the right platform. We go to Instagram. Now, Instagram is slightly female skewed, but not as much as most people think, and it still has a large amount of users here in Australia. It's also owned by Facebook, which means some of the same advertising stuff does work. The plus side for Instagram, for about the next 12 months, you'll still be able to build a following fairly easily organically. By that, I mean unpaid. So using hashtags, using influencers, doing those kind of things will get you a new following. You can build an audience quite quickly without having to pay for advertising. So when I say resources, if you have zero ad budget, Facebook's going to be a struggle, but Instagram could be a good opportunity. We're also seeing a big shift in Instagram recently to more the young millennials, and that's because they've added Instagram stories, which basically is a direct rip-off of the Snapchat channel. So you can have this really short-term content, and that's attracting all of the younger millennials to the platform. So Snapchat really took off and was a massive opportunity about 12 to 18 months ago for nonprofits because very few were doing it well. But the audience is starting to migrate away from Snapchat towards Instagram. So if you really want to get millennial audiences, I would suggest Snapchat or Instagram stories as your best way to engage young people. So if you want younger donors, younger volunteers, they're really great platforms to play with. Twitter is really good for attracting advocacy, for dealing with the media, for impacting with government, or if you're trying to reach anyone in the creative spaces. So people like me, marketers, journalists, writers, anyone in that creative world, we tend to be very connected on Twitter and are quite active over there. So Twitter's great for that. The downside for many nonprofits with Twitter, it is really, really fast paced. So you have to be on there all the time, engaging and responding to people. So that can often be a drain. If you're not going to be able to respond to people within an hour or so, probably steer clear of Twitter because it is much more of a back and forward conversation than the other platforms are. All right, Pinterest, as you can see, the audience is far smaller than any of the other ones currently usage in Australia. The big strength, it drives a lot of link back click traffic to your website, but the audience is a bit more narrow. It tends to be more for brands that have that kind of, you know, crafty side or food side or something that can be really visual that Pinterest works well for. And Google Plus has pretty much died off. I wouldn't worry about that too much now. Cool. All right, let's keep moving. I know I've got probably got a lot of questions, but there's a lot of things I want to cover over the next sort of half an hour. So my top tip, you are better to do one channel or one platform really well than to do 3 badly or 10 badly or 20 badly. So you're much better investing your time in one place, really owning it, doing it well, and building an ideal audience than you are spreading yourself too thin. All right, mistake number 2, trying to talk to everyone. Now, a really good analogy for this, a lot of charities are used to that model where you go into your local Woolworths or your Coles, and as you're walking out the door with your shopping, there's someone there going, hi, can I just grab you for a second? I just want to talk about, you know, the starving 3-legged dogs in Ethiopia, to come up with a really random and not at all realistic example. And they will then try to get you to make a donation on the spot. So what happens in that instance is they are really happy to get a donation from anyone. They don't mind if they're 12 years old or 120 years old, whether it's a mum, a dad, nationality, background, nothing. The problem I see is with social media, we treat it a little bit the same, that it doesn't matter who's willing to donate or who's willing to volunteer because we're quite happy to have anyone, right? Unfortunately, that does not work for you on social media. If you go onto social media with the idea that we're going to attract everybody, I'm sorry, it's just not going to work for you. Talking to everybody means nobody is actually listening. If you can't speak to someone in a way that really engages them personally, you're not going to get them to take action online. So you need to really niche down and understand who you're talking to. So to give you another example, if we look at all of these faces, you know, in the second row, we've got our 60s plus couple in the green shirt and the tied blazer. I like to think, you know, what are they thinking about and worried about right now? Say they're traveling around Australia in their camper van. They're worried about, you know, having enough quality time with their grandkids. They're worried about making their pension go far enough, you know, those kind of things. Whereas if we look down the bottom, 2 rows down, we've got the hipster dude with the beard. What he's worried about, what he's motivated by is really different. He might be really worried about getting a really cool, you know, roommate. He might care about, you know, furthering his career. He might care about where he can get his next bottle of beard wax. The motivations are really different. So you can see, just visualizing those 2 audiences, if you tried to have a message that was going to engage with both of them, you're essentially going to end up somewhere in the middle and you're not going to effectively get outcomes from either of them. So that's the importance of understanding who you're talking to on what platform. I strongly suggest the best way to do it is to profile out your ideal audience. So who are you trying to reach, and writing a one page of each different profile. It's okay if you want the millennial hipster and the retirees. You just have to know each of their audiences really well and where to find them online. A great example I often use for people is they're like, oh, we're really happy to have any volunteer, anybody can volunteer with us. I'm like, okay, great. But in your head, can you visualize right now one volunteer that is really epic in your organization? Like they do more than everyone else, they work harder than everyone else, they get better outcomes than everyone else. Think about what makes that person so great, because that starts to help you profile your ideal audience. Is it because they're studying at university in a related field and they have lots of free hours during the day? Is it because they're looking for long-term career experience? Is it because, you know, the children at school and they don't need to work? What is it that makes them great? Because you're actually better off getting 10 of those than 100 of the people who are only going to stay with you a short time and who maybe won't get you the results you're looking for. So really try and picture your ideal donor, your ideal volunteer. What is it about them that makes them special? And let's go and find those people online. So here are the kind of questions you need to answer. And you guys, you will get these slides, so you will get this information to be able to screenshot it later. These are some of the questions I'd want you to answer about your ideal audience. Demographics, so how old are they, where do they live, what job do they do, where do they live, where are they physically, you know, financial situation, what makes them unique compared to everyone else in the same demographics. So do they have to be a homeowner, a pet owner, do they have to be engaged, super fit, a parent? What are their behaviors? You know, where do they shop? What kind of gadgets do they use? What TV shows are they obsessed with? And then the psychographic stuff. How do they think? How do they feel? What do they want? What gets them stressed out at night? How can you solve their problem? What will stop them from wanting to volunteer with you? The more you understand the profile, the much easier it becomes to create content that does engage your audience really effectively, because they feel like you get them and you're talking about something they actually care about. Hoping this makes sense for everyone. Do just shout out into questions and let us know if you're all good, you're keeping up. No, if you're stuck. Tina can let me know if you're having any challenges. Otherwise, I'm going to keep on pushing through. So once you know who you're talking to, you can find out where to put them then. So where are they online? All right, mistake number 3, one-sided conversations. A little bit like a webinar, always feels a little bit odd like this, but the best example I can give you is a dinner party, right? So if Tina invited me to her house for a dinner party, thanks Tina, very generous of you, and I stood up at the end of the table and I went, hi, I'm Alicia. So I'm married, I live in Perth, I have a 6-year-old son, I'm traveling to America today, I run a company that does this, this, and this, and I just went on and on and on and on and on, just talked about myself. What do we think is going to happen? I can pretty much guarantee Tina's never going to invite me back to her house again. And certainly the people in the room are going to go, oh my God, she is so into herself. What an awful human being. That's not how we talk to people at a dinner party. Yet nonprofit always do this on social media. You just talk at people and talk about yourselves. Instead, what do we do at a dinner party? You know, we might sit down at the table and say to the person next to each other, oh, hey, so lovely to meet you. My name's Alicia. So how do you know Tina? So you find common ground first. What connected us? The fact we both know Tina. That's a great place to start the conversation. Then it's give and take. Oh, what do you do? Oh, this is what I do. You know, do you have any kids? Oh, yeah, I've got one too, about the same age. You build empathy, you build relationship, and then you build trust. And then you can actually have a good conversation. So this is one of the greatest analogies for your social media channels. Don't talk about yourself all the time and don't talk at people. You actually want to have a back and forward conversation where you give as much value as you receive. Have you guys been guilty of this? I'd love to get some yeses and nos, and Tina to let me know what that's kind of looking like. Is this something that resonates with you that you realize that you have been doing for a while? And don't be embarrassed to say that you have. It is really, really common. And it's okay if you haven't either, because thumbs up to you if you're already creating good, engaging back and forth conversation. So Tina, do we have some responses coming through?
Yes, and I won't name and shame anyone. We do have some yeses, a couple of nos, mostly yeses. A few
I'm not
comments.
too surprised.
Few comments. We often just post blank facts and there's no engagement. Yes, we do this. It's hard to share what resources we have without just explaining them. Yes, we've been posting about what we do here. So a lot of yeses. couple of
Yeah, and
days.
that's totally common, everyone. So if you're doing that, don't freak out. It's okay. There's plenty of time to change that. So just start thinking about how you're going to turn that blank fact into an actual engaging conversation. You know, even just asking people if they agree or if they don't agree, or if it's useful or if it's not useful, starts to turn it around from just talking at people to actually building a community. And sometimes it's about finding, and that's the importance of profiling your audience we talked about in the last one. If you know your audience are mad keen basketball fans, why can't you be talking about basketball on your social media channel? Even if it's nothing to do with your cause, you know it's going to get your audience excited, and that's actually more important in building a community. All right, so you need to know what topics your audience will engage with. And that for a lot of you sounds like it's the gap. You don't know what topics or what conversations your audience wants to have yet. And that's the best sign I can see of you don't actually know who you're speaking to yet. So what you're putting out there, you can't tailor it to what they're worried about. Because if you were tailoring that fact to a mum with a young child who's worried about my child with a medical condition versus a mum who's worried about her mother, you know, they're very different audiences and very different profiles. So really go back to the basics and understand your audience, and your engagement and topics will come a lot more easily because you know what they're interested in instead of what you're interested in, because they're quite different. I often get asked questions about benchmarks from this webinar, so I've actually thrown a few slides in. I hope this isn't death by numbers, but a lot of people find this really interesting. So these are compiled from a couple of research studies of nonprofits and industry benchmarks. So on Facebook right now, industry average is very, very small for engagement rate. So it's less than 1%. And it's a bit more for non-profit, so we actually start getting a little bit more engagement there, but it's still really, really low, and that's what the industry is saying right now engagement rate is. So no surprise if you're not getting a lot of engagement on your Facebook page. Your engagement target, on the other hand, should be 2 to 6%. That's what most of the clients and non-profits we work with get as a standard. Then if you're getting 6 to 10%, you're really smashing it, you're well above average, you're starting to get some really good community sentiment. And if you're getting over 10%, that's amazing. We've got some clients right now who are even getting 20, 25%, which is fantastic, because you're better off having a small, highly engaged community than a large community who doesn't actually listen. Click-through rates from ads is still really low, so under 1% for most industries. So if you're getting that, that's totally normal. And most nonprofits on Facebook are posting just over once a day. Instagram engagement rate is a little bit higher. We're actually looking at 1% for industry and 2% for non-for-profit. So they're getting higher engagement rates on Instagram, even though that is still low. And again, I would be targeting for more of that 2 to 6% would be my bare minimum of saying you're doing okay. And then anything up from that just shows you're really kicking goals. On average, not-for-profits post less than half a post per day. So obviously posting 2 or 3 times a week, really. Cool, hope that's useful. The next thing I'd recommend you do strategically when you're trying to deal with this kind of conversation is develop a response and engagement plan. So something like this visual here. So social media post discovered, yes or no. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it a troll? Is it true? Is it not true? And then you have this whole matrix that shows you what you do in the different circumstances. That makes creating engagement a lot easier on social media, and you know what to do when things go wrong as well as when they go right. Also, crisis escalation plans are really good too. So something like this, what could go wrong? What are you going to do in those instances if it goes wrong? And how are you going to escalate that within the organization is really good stuff for your senior management. All right. I know somebody's already brought this up in some of the comments at the start. Being afraid to be real is one of the most common things I see. And that's okay. But if you want to succeed on social media, you've got to get past it. What I see quite often in the social media space is people posting as brands and being super robotic. I often get people to say, oh, so we've got a big event coming up, and I posted about it on my personal Facebook, and I posted it about the company's Facebook, and the personal one went crazy and everybody was engaging, and the business one didn't do very well. 2 reasons. One, there's obviously an algorithm factor there if it's Facebook, so pages will reach less people than personal profiles with. But what I also see more often than not is when I go to the page, the post is on January 27th at 9 p.m. We are super excited to be hosting this fantastic new function, and we strongly encourage you to click on the link and come and join us, right? boring, unemotional, doesn't target anybody, doesn't connect with anyone. But then when we post it on our personal page, we're like, hey, I'm super excited. I've been working on this like conference for 3 months and it's finally here. Yay, get your butts down there. It's going to be awesome. I can tell you which one works. It's the get your butts down here. This is going to be awesome, because you sound like a human being and you're actually connecting with people in a more personal way. A lot of not-for-profit organizations get their comms people dictated from the fact that you have to be professional, you have to be corporate, you have to look great online. The truth is, it's wrong. It will not work. Social media is about being social. The more casual, the more relaxed, and the more engaging and human-like your content is, the better it's going to be. Spelling mistakes are fine. Emojis are great. You know, you want to be a real person, because too many of us try to do this. We hide behind our brand and the organization's name and think this is who we have to be. And we forget to be ourselves, and we forget to be human. One of the simplest strategies you can implement from this webinar is actually putting, you know, faces of your team in front of cameras, in front of videos, even signing off messages with your name on social, and actually letting people understand the real human beings behind your organization. People engage with other people, not with brands. Just think about the horrible trolling you see for big brands like Telstra or Qantas, Woolworths. People can attack those brands because it's not attacking a person. If you humanize your brand, people are far less likely to be critical because they know they're not attacking Woolworths, they're attacking Amy and Sarah and John. Very different. The other thing for you to realize is, how do people get invested in your story if you're not showing it to them? One of the things I find with non-for-profits is you want to show people the rosy stuff. Here's the great win. Here's the day where everything went perfectly. Here's how fantastic we are, because we want to put across that super professional and shiny image all the time. I'm here to tell you that is actually far less successful than letting some of the crack show and being a little bit more real. A really simple analogy. I know I get a lot of people on these webinars in the non-profit space who are parents. So most of you have probably seen or at least heard of Finding Nemo. Now, we don't get behind the story of Marlin because everything he does is perfect. He's like the parent of the year. Everything goes wonderfully. Everything just coincidentally goes their way and it's all shiny and roses, because that would be a really boring movie, right? Instead, we get behind Marlin because, you know, his wife Coral dies suddenly and he loses almost all his babies and he only has one little boy left and he's got a funny flipper, and then he goes missing too. And then Marlin does some really stupid things. He makes some bad decisions. He's mean to people he shouldn't be. But we're so invested in that journey because by midway through, we just want him to succeed and for him to get a break. This is so true for your brand and your social media. Don't be afraid of telling people when things go wrong. People are really willing to help and they will come out and give you these incredible opportunities. So for example, one of our clients recently, Foxglove Project, was struggling because they were growing and they needed office space. They did a really simple post on Facebook and someone donated them a huge, very fancy office right in the center of the city, rent-free for 2 years, because they actually spoke up and said they were struggling. So don't be afraid to share your mistakes as well as your wins. People really get behind an organization that they can see needs their help in a real way. If everything looks too shiny and pretty, they think, oh, they don't need my money. They don't need my help. They've already got it together. Hope this is resonating with everyone. Another simple fact to know in this space as well is we know that statistically, consumers are 64% more likely to trust a brand just because they're interacting positively on social media. Right, that's huge. On the flip side, there's a study that came out recently that said in Australia, around 14% of Australians trust charities. That's horrifying, right? Only 14% of people think charities are trustworthy. So social media flips it the other way. And if you're active on social media, you actually build trust because people think you have less to hide. So if your boss is asking you why we're doing it, this is one of the main reasons you should be there. The next thing to remember, as soon as you really own who you are, who you're trying to talk to, your audience and what you're about, people won't like you. That is okay. Not everybody has to like you. You're actually better off being really specific to the people you want to engage with. If they don't like you, they are not the right audience because they're never going to donate. They're never going to volunteer if you show them who you really are. So instead, go for the people who are already going to resonate with who you are. So really simple example of what we did with Lifeline is they realized they were hiding behind statistics and brands and phone calls answered and suicide rates, and they very rarely talked about their team. So we got them to change their Facebook cover photo, and this is what they did. They actually showed some of their staff just holding balloons that spelled out their helpline number. These simple things make an enormous difference. Now, one of the things that they did at Lifeline is one of the opportunities they had really missed as well was telling the human stories behind what they do. So we challenged them to create 4 really simple videos filmed with iPhones. As you can see, people sitting on a park bench just talking about their own journeys. So I was here. This is how I felt. I believe the world would be a better place if I took my own life. I called Lifeline. This is what's happened. This is what happened. Now, if you're in a position to help Lifeline, please do, because they literally saved my life. And if I can help them do that for someone else, then, you know, I will, and you should too. These really simple videos, you can see one example here. This reached over 20,000 people, you know, 546 likes. There was likes on shares. There were shares upon shares. It was huge for them. So this was a really, really effective campaign. So they actually reached 600,000 people on Facebook. I would love you all to guess how much it actually cost them to run a campaign like this. So how much money do you think they spent on advertising to get this kind of outcome? I might point out as well, I mentioned their story earlier. So they actually raised $12,000 from this as well. So Tina, do you want me to read out for me what people are guessing in terms of how much they think they spent on advertising?
Yep, we have $30, $2,000, $5,000, $0,
Interesting. We always get
200.
such a big mix.
Yes,
Such a big
big.
mix. Look, I think if you're saying $0, that would be lovely. And I think everybody would like to get that. And there is a lot of stuff you can do for free. But as I mentioned before, Facebook is actually really hard to get engagement now unpaid. So it's quite difficult to get huge organic reach without paying money. But the person who said $30 should get a little thumbs up from me, because you're actually the closest. They spent a total of $25 on Facebook advertising to push out 4 videos they filmed themselves to raise 12 grand and attract 600,000 people. So it is possible, and it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. But the difference is we knew exactly who they were going to speak to. So the video with the retiree guy we just saw, it was targeted to men over the age of 50 and their wives. We did another one with teenage girls that were targeted to teenage girls and their mums. So we understood exactly who was going to take action, who was going to care, and who was going to donate. That's why it was so effective. If you don't have the story right and you don't have the audience right, you'd never be able to achieve this for $25. You probably wouldn't have even achieved it for $2,500. So this is why this stuff's important. Another really simple post from Zonta. So Zonta House Refuge, domestic violence shelter. Really simple post. Look at how simple this is. It says, "Can you help?" Smiley face. You can see this graphic has not been done by a professional graphic designer. It's something really simple they popped together themselves. What do they need at the shelter with a thank you? This one post reached 12,500 people, and they got so many donated items that they had enough to clothe everyone in the shelter with underwear and pajamas for 6 months from one post. So this is the importance of the stuff I'm teaching you about strategy, because the outcomes from this can be huge for your organization. Someone like Lifeguard Maxi, who's on Bondi Rescue, he has a social enterprise called Live, Learn, Survive. He just recently did a partnership with Australia Tourism and did some tours on the Insta stories from him of Bondi Beach, which they posted on their Insta stories. He had 1,000% increase on website traffic to his charity page because of that online content. It wasn't about the charity at all. It was just about Bondi Beach and how beautiful it is. But because it linked back, it's amazing the outcome it actually drove for the organization. Cool. So I know somebody else spoke about this one, bad images and video, or worse, not using them at all. I'll show you why that matters. 300 million photos are being added to Facebook each day. That's a huge volume of images. And it's largely because of this. We all have phones in our pockets that can take photos. We all love to share photos of our beautiful lunch and our trip to the beach and show everyone how perfect and shiny our lives are. So one of the things you need to know is images engage 3 times more than text alone. So if you're doing text only posts, images are going to get you higher engagement. My best tip for you is register for this program, Canva. They have a program called Canva for Nonprofits, which is free for registered nonprofits. If you are a social enterprise, you can still get Canva. We use it as well, but there is a small fee for the business app, and there's a free personal one as well. You can get access to this totally free, and you can design professional graphics in a matter of minutes for absolutely nothing. So do check out the Canva for Nonprofit program. Some other great tools, and as I said, you will get these slides to create great images. Look at tools like Afterlight, Camera Plus 2, Easel, PicMonkey, PS Express, and Stencil. Almost all of these are free or very low cost. They're apps on your phone or on your computer, and you can easily make professional looking graphics, photography. You can put cool filters and adjust your photos, so even the most basic photo taken from your phone can look a little bit more special. Another top tip from the store Typo, you can actually buy these really simple clip-on lights. A lot of stores have them, but I know Typo has some good ones, although when I checked last night, they were out of stock at the moment. They should be back in soon. They just clip to the top of your phone and it projects a really nice light on you. So if you're doing a lot of video or photos of yourself, selfies, things like that, it's a really effective tool to use for that. Another cool thing that I love is these Gorilla Pods, these little tripod stands. The legs are totally flexible, so you can wrap them around anything, a street pole, a sign. So if you're trying to get a good photo and get it really super still, these are great. They're about $20, $30 online. Video is 3 times more effective than images. Video for a lot of nonprofits is scary, but I can tell you right now, it works so well. And it doesn't have to be fancy. Here's an example from Girl Guides. They literally stood at the door of their office and went, welcome to Girl Guides, I'm going to take you on a tour. And they just walked through their offices, showed them around, and this video reached nearly 3,000 people. So simple, 1,000 people watched the video. It took them a matter of minutes. It was really simple and easy, and this was entirely done without any paid advertising. So it doesn't have to be complicated. The other thing to remember that's increased the watch of videos is the update of Facebook stories, Instagram stories, those short behind the scene videos. We see right now 500 million Instagram stories per day. Another really great tool to check out is an app called Shaker. You can see the spelling at the top, S-H-A-K-R. You can have a monthly subscription, and they have tons and tons of video templates that all you need to do is drop in photos, and it will put it to music and animate it and make it look really cool and super funky and professional. It's a great way to create really simple videos on the fly. You can also add little snippets of videos and it will turn it into this really cool stuff. So one worth checking out as well if you're doing a lot of video. We know Facebook video views will exceed 64 billion views this year. Currently in Australia, more videos are watched on Facebook than they are on YouTube. The other reason is Facebook is incentivizing video. So they paid around $50 million to get celebrities and influencers to use Facebook Live when it launched. What that means is the algorithm favors video, mostly live video, but any type of video will get more cut through than any other type because they want to become a more video dynamic platform. All right, who is using video regularly now? Just give me a yes or a no. Are you using video regularly? Are you a bit scared of it? Or is it something you're going to do after watching this webinar?
Lots of no's. Lots of no's. Couple of yeses, not regularly, not enough. For digital stories specifically, scared because I want the content to be good. No, but I'm going to start now.
Nice.
Not regular, but getting
I love
to do
that. So be confident. It can be really scary, particularly if we're putting ourselves in front of the camera. It can be nerve-wracking, but my best advice, the more you do it, the less scary it becomes. So give it a crack. It's amazing how much more engaging it is. Even just running live Q&A sessions or just little, instead of writing a big long post about something, just doing a couple of little snippet videos from behind the scenes, talking about it, it's much more human and real. So please do give video more of a crack moving forward. Okay, well, I'm mindful of time. So mistake 6, failing to measure. I see this all the time that nonprofits and causes don't look at their analytics. So how would you know what actually works or if you're getting results if you're not looking at the numbers and you're not measuring those outcomes? I'll give you the top tip. You can't. You can't get engagement and good results if you're not measuring what's working and what's not. So you need to measure your results every month and look at your analytics across your different social media platforms. Facebook is the one that most of you are using, so I'll show you quickly how you do that. So if you're logged in as an admin to your page, the blue arrow is just pointing to the button inside. So that's where you click to get your numbers. Your overview page looks something like this. It gives you an idea within the last 7 days, actions taken, page likes, reach, post engagement, etc. It gives you a nice overview of the last 7 days, or you can change it at the top to the last 28 days. A couple of other things I would really look at. So you need to see what didn't work. If you're posting a Throwback Thursday every Thursday and there's crickets, no one's responding, stop doing it. It's just not working for your audience. You need to look for the ones that are surprisingly successful, and we often see patterns in those. So posts that have people's faces tend to be far more engaging than posts that don't. You might see posts that are funny tend to get you more engagement, or maybe something that's serious, or inspirational quotes, or video. So you start to notice patterns, and when you can find the pattern, you can replicate that content more and more and drop the stuff that's not working, and that's how you increase your engagement and your results every single month. Sounds simple, but it's so true. So we might just skip that one because I know we've got a little bit of time. So the top things I would look at is on the post page, this tab at the top. So I'll just move the arrow so you can see what I'm looking at here. When your fans are online is a really great tab to check out. So this literally tells you when people who like your Facebook page are using Facebook, not your page, using Facebook. What this answers is a really common question I get, which is what time of day should I post? There are no right or wrongs for your brand, for every organization, only for your brand. So if I was this organization, I'd be posting maybe at 8 o'clock in the morning. I would definitely be posting at about 2:45 in the afternoon, and then probably no later than about 6 o'clock at night, because they're peak times or coming into peak times across your social media. So this will tell you when the best times to post are, and just changing the time of day that you post has a huge difference to your engagement rates. Also check out this graphic as well. So we want you to go into your people and look at your fans, which is the tab at the top right here. So your fans, it tells you if they're male or female and what age group they're in. The first thing I'd be looking here, is that reflective of who you want to attract? Often I will see that there'll be a high number of, say, 45 to 54-year-old women for a brand that's trying to attract millennials. And I know straight away the person creating the content is going to be a 45-year-old woman, because you're writing about what you're interested in and not the people you're trying to reach. Now you can click across this top margin to your followers, people reach, and people engage. I'll just show you people engage. And I'll just say this is from the same page. So you can see here how our audience was really high in the middle, but our reach is actually really different. We're actually engaging very few men and far less of the 25 to 34. So if this brand's goal was to interact 35 to 44-year-old women, we're nailing it, because you're getting a high engagement in that follower base. So this is a really important number for you to keep an eye on. My last tip in this is beware of vanity metrics. I see so many nonprofits coming to me and go, right, the board has tasked me with increasing our Facebook following by 20%, or to get to 10,000 likes by the end of the month, or something like that. That is a vanity metric. It doesn't actually do anything for your organization. Getting likes is no longer a goal for your organization. If it is, throw it away. The Lifeline example I talked about before, they had only 2,000 likes on their page when they raised $12,000 and reached 600,000 people. It doesn't matter. And the simple reason is organic reach is really low. So if you pay money to get 1,000 likes on your page, when you post, only 2% of them are going to see it anyway. So what was the point? You're actually better off having your metrics as money raised, volunteer attracted, advocacy achieved, awareness, reach, those kind of numbers. Don't worry about how many likes you do or don't have. It actually doesn't matter. So you need to decide what's more important for your brand. Is it about reach? Is it about engagement? Or is it about likes? For most people, it's often about reach. So set your goals properly. So here's an example from Girl Guides that gives you some perspective on this. So they've been trying to recruit for volunteers to be like their troop leaders for quite a while. They were getting hundreds and hundreds of queries every week from potential volunteers. So what they told us was, I need more people nominating to become volunteers. What we realized really quickly is that, right, if we get 1,000 people contact you by the end of the week, what will happen? And they just kind of went, whoa, we wouldn't be able to manage that. We don't have the staff, we don't have the resources. So what they thought they needed wasn't actually the truth. What we found was that the volunteers, people contacting them to volunteer, only 1 or 2% would convert to become a volunteer. So we had to rewind, look at the audience, look at the messaging, look at the content, and change that. So now they get 60% conversion. So they actually get less people inquiring, but a better outcome. So it's less work for their staff, and a better result for the organization. So don't think you just need more numbers. Sometimes you need to actually look at how you're converting and how your outcome is working. So for example, someone like Perth Children's Hospital Foundation just filled 280 volunteer spots for a total cost of $55. So very high result for a very low cost. But if they didn't know the goal was to fill volunteer spots and they instead focused on likes on their page, they probably would have spent way more money with way less result. You can also get analytics on Twitter. So if you're not already on it, it's at the bottom of the page, analytics.twitter.com. So if you have a Twitter account, you can set up analytics, which will give you some information as well. It's on Instagram. It's on this little graph at the top. If you're on an Instagram profile, not a page, convert to a page first, and then the analytics will appear. So you can get some basic stuff like your impressions, top posts, days of the week, and some of that gender and age range information as well, which is super useful. Cool. We're up to the last mistake, just in time for 9 o'clock, and then I can take some more questions. The last mistake and the biggest mistake I see, this is definitely the biggest, is failing to plan. What I mean by that is actually not having a social media strategy or a social media plan and just getting up every day and going, what am I going to post about today? That's why you don't get return on investment. That's why you're not getting engagement, because you're not actually planning strategically your content for the month, for the quarter. So I'd love to know, and I'll get Tina to share this with me as I wrap up, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of your social media is being planned versus being done ad hoc or on a day-to-day basis where you go, oh, I might just post that as well? I'd love to know. You will always struggle to grow, to get more audience, to get more engagement, and to get more outcomes if you're not being strategic about what you're trying to do. If you don't have a strategy, that problem is going to continue, no matter how many of these tweaks you add in. So planning needs to get out of your head and onto paper, because the other thing that happens as well is your nonprofit, if it's not written down and you leave, they're going to lose all that information and resource, which is pretty sucky. So we want to build capacity, sustainability, and an asset. So an actual document that tells them, how do you raise money from Facebook? How are you attracting volunteers on Instagram? Because that can be used again and again for every campaign that you're creating. So really simple example, someone like Tiny Sparks in WA, teeny tiny little not-for-profit, they were asking for money all the time. They were doing lots of fundraising things and never getting much of an outcome. All we did is actually narrow the story and go, what are you raising money for right now? And just through Instagram stories, over 3 weeks, she raised $4,370. And Amber's literally a one-woman band, so very limited resources. But it's just the difference between just being blanket, hey, we need fundraising, and actually creating a strategy with a specific audience and specific steps to get the outcome. Another great client we've worked with is Soldier On. So Soldier On have done a fantastic campaign recently called Stronger Together. You can see here what they did is they challenged people to do these arm wrestles to raise awareness for Soldier On and raise money. So it's for people who've been in the armed forces, who have left, etc. This campaign, we got the Prime Minister doing an arm wrestle through to, it was on the Today Show, which was amazing. That campaign reached hundreds of thousands of people on social media, and they actually literally just messaged me yesterday to say the campaign raised $600,000. How incredible is that? And that just came from the same thing, putting a strategy in place instead of being ad hoc about social media. So what do you need to do in a strategy? The last thing I'm quickly going to run you through. The first thing is your storytelling. What is your story? What's your voice going to sound like? How are you going to tell it? Who are you going to talk to? Who's your audience? How are you going to speak to them? And what do they actually want from you so you can give them as much value as they give you? The next part is growth. How will you grow? The honest truth is just posting is no longer enough. You need a growth strategy. So you need to have a strategy with influencers or advertising or follow back campaigns. You need a specific plan in place to grow. Otherwise, you'll only get that very small, slow, organic growth. You're probably not going to get to where you want to be as fast as if you actually had a growth strategy. You need a plan to maximize your community and to minimize risk. So once you do build a following, obviously you want to maximize that community so they're super behind you. So as soon as you ask for help, they jump and help. And you want to minimize risk. You want to minimize that negative stuff, the risk management stuff of people having a go at your brand online, because unfortunately it does happen. The last part is sustainability, and that's where you're building things that are simple fundraising funnels, when you're building content management plans, and you're actually setting your goals and budgets over a year to really get sustainable ongoing results. Does that make sense? I hope I haven't covered too much. I tried to put a lot of high value stuff in there. I know we're 5 minutes over, but just to quickly summarize. So the biggest mistakes we're making is doing too much, talking to everyone, having one-sided conversations, being afraid to be real, bad images and videos, failing to measure, and then failing to plan. So they are if you can fix even 2 or 3 of these mistakes in your organization, I can guarantee you're going to get more engagement, more growth, and I'm really excited to hear about how you go. Before we go to questions, I just want to let you know, and Tina and the team at Connecting Up will send this link around as well. If you want more free training from me and my team, go to this link. We run an event called Change the World. We have one in 2 weeks in Melbourne. We have them in Sydney, Adelaide, and Perth in May, and I think it's Sydney, Adelaide, Perth, Melbourne, and Brisbane in October. So there's pre-registrations from the dates that aren't open, and there you could register now for a ticket. All of these events fill up, and they seat between 200 and 500 people depending on the location. So get in and register. You get a full day of training, and everyone from me to we have non-profit speakers talking about their social media success campaigns. We have people like the Polish Man, Who Gives a Crap. We've even had a guy over from Walt Disney before to come and speak. So get in on this, and you can get a lot more free training from me. But as I said, if you've got more questions, I've put my email address there. You've got all my social media, my email address twice, just in case you forget it, and all my social media contacts there if you want to reach out to me after this. Otherwise, I will hand over to Tina and we can take some questions, which I'm sure there will be a lot. I know some of you may have to run, but you can always listen back to the video afterwards if you want to listen to the responses for some of the questions. But Tina, if we're okay, I'm happy to hang around for a little bit longer and answer questions if we have them.
Thanks, Alicia. We have a ton of questions, so I will cherry pick a few for us to go through, and whatever we don't get through, I'll send them through to Alicia with your contact details, and her team will contact you directly with an answer. So
Amazing,
let's
that'll be
get
fantastic. Let's go.
started. Yeah. So the first one is, I'm interested in how much time to invest in Facebook posts, particularly non-paid posts.
Really great question. It's a little bit of a how long's a piece of string question, but I will say to you, the best advice I can give, the coolest thing that's changed with Facebook, just 4 years ago, Facebook's recommendation was for the best engagement on Facebook, you had to post 7 times a day, right? Who's got time for that? The cool thing is with the algorithm change, you're actually better off having high quality strategic content less often. So Facebook pages for nonprofits are getting great outcomes from just 2 or 3 posts a week at the moment. So you're better off having high impact strategic content less often. So normally what I would suggest is if you've got a heavy Facebook strategy or even Facebook and something else, I would spend about half a day per month and I would plan and create all of your content for the month. Then every day you're just jumping in to respond to questions and comments and just monitor what's going on. Once a week I'd check your analytics just to see if anything surprising happens, so you don't wait a whole month to capitalize on something that's working well. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, the next one is, what about LinkedIn as a platform? Many recommend this social media forum for us to attract corporate funders and sponsors. Interested to know your thoughts on this.
Absolutely, and I realized as I went through the platforms, I didn't really touch on LinkedIn. I actually have to say right now, if I could say the single most biggest opportunity platform for nonprofits, it would be LinkedIn for exactly the reason you just said. So LinkedIn for Hancock Creative is our most effective strategy for getting people to attend our events or come along to our training, because we can target people by industry, because obviously our clients are nonprofits, causes, social enterprises. It's harder to reach those sort of people on Facebook because you can't tell the difference between someone who is a volunteer or a donor versus who is a volunteer manager or a donation manager. So LinkedIn, you can do that. So we have a lot of nonprofits who are doing fundraising and volunteer attraction campaigns through LinkedIn, and they're very, very effective. My top tip is it can be quite difficult doing it as a LinkedIn page or as a brand. You may be better off having a spokesperson for your brand, which might be your CEO or a board member, and connect with people through your personal profile and reach out to people about donations that way, rather than doing it through the page, because it is harder to build following of a page on LinkedIn. It's more of a one-to-one platform.
Okay, the next one is, what is the best way to optimize not-for-profits Google grant for social media?
Oh, that is such a huge question. So that's a really difficult one. Most of it is coming around at I guess by being a little bit clever. So let me give you a specific story example, might be the best way to do that in a short, succinct space. So for example, when we worked with the Live Lighter campaign with Heart Foundation, their goal was to get lots of traffic to build awareness for, obviously heart issues for people being obese and things like that. The challenge was we could never use that Google grant to advertise for things like weight loss or fat or obesity, because you know what, there are so many brands in Australia paying a lot of money to target that audience already. Just imagine your Michelle Bridges, your Weight Watchers, there's so many companies already advertising. The cost per click is like $40. So that wasn't realistic because the Google grants, I think it's $2-ish they cap the bidding at. So to maximize it, you need to think about what resources you have that you can do low bids for. So with Live Lighter, the strategy we came up with is they had hundreds and hundreds of great healthy eating recipes. And when we looked, if we looked at the cost per conversion to healthy butter chicken recipe, we could see there were thousands of people searching for it, but no one was paying money for it. So we were able to get #1 search for that, and it was costing 8 cents per click to their website. And obviously we just made sure at the bottom of the butter chicken recipe, there's also more information about heart health and all the kind of things, and it pushed them elsewhere in the website. So that little strategy meant they could spend a lot more of the Google grant, and they literally, I think they had something like crazy, like a 2,000% increase in traffic to their website. So you need to get clever and you need to work around. There are agencies who can help you with that. For us, we actually have a program called Gain and Retain. We bring in Google trainers. Somebody from Google actually comes in and teaches our clients. They spend like a good half a day on this because it can be a little bit tricky. So you probably need to get a little bit more training support on that, whether that's through an agency or someone like us that could teach you to do it. But it is totally possible, and it's well worth taking the time to figure it out.
Okay, the next one is, how do we target teachers on Facebook when they would most likely not use their personal profiles with their profession? There are no work emails linked to their Facebook profiles to target them via FB ads.
It actually doesn't matter. So Facebook collects more than 1 million points of data on every user, and that means they're tracking those people with the GPS on their phone, they're tracking people with their internet searches. So if that teacher is logging into online teaching portals, if they're looking about teaching materials online, if they're actually spending a lot of time at a school, Facebook will know they are a teacher. It figures this stuff out. It's super clever. So there is actually targeting so there's 3 types of ads on Facebook. You can do the boost post, you can use Ads Manager, or you can use the page editor. So the power editor, sorry. Ads Manager, you can go in by occupation, and you can put interested in teaching, and that will then target teachers. Then you can do it by geographic location. So I only want teachers who live within 15 kilometers of Bondi or something, and then you can target down to that audience. The other thing to look at is custom audience targeting or lookalike audience targeting. So for example, if you've got an existing email list of 500 teachers, you can put that into Facebook and target those people with your ads. You can also tell Facebook to find a lookalike audience. It will analyze those 500 people, find what they have in common, and then it will show ads to similar people. So that works really well as well.
Okay, the next one is, are hashtags helpful on Facebook?
My personal advice is no. So the main reason being, Facebook is designed to be more human to human, and I say they pride themselves. They're pretty big on trying to get security right on Facebook, which means most personal profiles are really locked down. So that means if you use a hashtag on Facebook, even if someone uses in their post, you can't aggregate the content because you can't get through the privacy settings. So it's not all that effective on Facebook. The only time I would really use it as a brand is, for example, if you had a campaign. So let's say MS Research Australia are doing Kiss Goodbye to MS. I would hashtag fundraising posts about Kiss Goodbye to MS with Kiss Goodbye to MS, so people could click on it and all they're going to see is your other posts relating to that campaign. There's a value in that. Otherwise, no, I would not use hashtags on Facebook. Great question.
Okay. So we've actually got about 30 more questions lined up, Alicia. So I think what I'll do is I will send them through to your team to respond, and I will send the responses out to everybody to share it so that everybody
Amazing.
can see and see all the answers and learn a bit more. So if people don't mind, we actually don't have time to go through everything at the moment. So I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of all the questions and the answers to the questions as well over the next few days as Alicia's team has time to go through them and answer them. And if anything does come to mind afterwards, you do have Alicia's contact details there, and you can also email our team at events@connectingup.org. So did you want to add anything before I finish off, Alicia?
Look, just to thank everyone for coming along. They were brilliant questions. I wish we had time for a little bit more. But as you say, I'm across every social media chat platform. So if you do want to learn a little bit more from us, you can follow me personally on Facebook. I have a Facebook profile page at facebook.com/Alicia Hancock. We also have Hancock Creative, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. We also do send out free training every week on email. So if you're interested in registering for that, just pop us a message to one of the social channels. We can get you on that, and do come along to our Change the World event as well. Our purpose is to help as many people as we can. So it may take us a little bit of time to get through all the questions, given that I am jumping on a plane to the United States today, but we will make sure we get back to everybody on your questions over the next few days. So thank you so much for joining in, everyone. I just hope you got a lot of value out of that. And sorry it took me so long, but I wanted to make sure I gave you everything that was going to be useful.
Great. Thank you so much for presenting today, and thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you've all learnt a lot from this presentation. I know that there were a lot of questions unanswered, but we'll make sure that they all do get answered. If you have any questions that come to mind later or any feedback at all, please send that through to events@connectingup.org and we'll answer those questions offline. Don't forget that the recording will be available on the website very shortly, and a link will be sent to you along with these slides. Again, thank you for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you all next time. Hope you have a safe trip, Alicia, and thank you again. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Tina.